हे गाइस, स्वागत है आप सबको मेरे चैनल सुनो कहानी में वेयर वी वर रीडिंग अ शिमला अफेयर बाय सृष्टि चौधरी। और दिस इज़ द लास्ट वीडियो ऑफ अ शिमला अफेयर। उसके पहले की सारी वीडियोस अपलोड है, आप लोग जाके सुन सकते हैं, रीड कर सकते हैं साथ साथ में, आपकी जो भी मर्जी करें। और इस लास्ट वीडियो में देखते हैं कि क्या होने वाला है। इसके पहले की जो वीडियो थी उसमें हमने पढ़ा था कि जो नूर है उसको बुलेट्स लग गई हैं और वो उसकी पूरी साड़ी जो है वो रेड हो गई है, पूरी मतलब खून से लथपथ है वो। तो अब देखेंगे कि आगे क्या होने वाला है। Once you reveal what is at stake, they will try to push your limits. See what they can do. If you don't match their action with a reaction, they will know they can push more, and they will push until no more space is left for you, just as in a game of cards. If the stakes have been raised, you cannot play a lower hand. You must match that or go higher, because if you don't, you are out of the game. I tremble on seeing how quickly blood spurted out and covered everything around it in red, reminding us of our transgressions. Noor seemed to so small and fragile here, like this, destroyed so easily, barely conscious. The thought scared me more than anything else. All through life, she had been our rock, a steady home, a protective shield of love that would never leave our side. Seeing her hurt and crumble like this opened my eyes in a way that nothing else did. That told me to roll up my sleeves and get work, for now we were in the real world. The bullet had grazed past the top of Noor's shoulder and taken off a chunk of her muscle and skin. While it had not hit her head or neck or heart or any of the places where it would have killed her within second or minute, it did make her bleed profusely. We did not stop the flow of blood and probably treat the wound, she would die. We immediately placed her on the sofa and held together her wound with a cloth, applying pressure on it to stem the flow of blood. Afrin hurried to get warm, clean wipes and bandages. I took Noor in my arms. She was breathing heavily and her eyes began to close. I called out her name incessantly until she woke up again. Kusaliji and Afrin slowly managed to close the wound as Charles kept Noor steady and Ratan Babu managed the hostages. Noor looked up upon Charles' face and gave the smallest of a smile. You saved us, she said, barely managing to get the words out. I implored her not to strain herself, but she was right. Charles had saved us. They would have let the bomb do its job and take a chance that Nalini and whoever else inside would not be able to handle the situation. How did you have the fight? I asked him. Once you told me about the meeting, I searched for it and what you said turned out to be true. Not that I believe that your intention in spying on the meeting were any way of innocent. I brought the file with me to the ball, but when I saw you there, I know you were not up to any good. I stared at him, my heart a wild mess. After some time, Noor started taking low, deep breath, and some color returned to her cheeks. Her eyes, however, were full of worry as the realization that we must act, or Paris hit her. They had tried to bomb us, fire at us, even hurt Noor. It was only a matter of time till they stormed the place. If we did not saw them there, we could also react. Ratan Babu seemed exhausted but dodged. His white shirt stained with spots of Noor's blood, his face struck with guilt. A flame fused over Noor, but behind it, I could see her eyes were tired and numb. Charles stood a little way away from us, leaning against a wall, confused and worried. Khusali was the only one who seemed calm, and it was him I turned for reassurance, for instructions for what comes next. You must act, Saiba, he offered. Respond adequately and swiftly, or they will eat you alive. If you don't learn to bite, you will end up a barking dog. A friend gave me her hand and I held it tightly, and we looked into each other's eyes. We stood up holding each other's hands. I'll come with you, Ratan Babu said, but we made him sit back. Stay with Noor, I said. We need to do this. She's our sister. We walked to the hostages with steady, measured steps. The sight of quite desperate, helpless men tied up and looking at me with fear should have vanished by my own, but no such thing happened. I was as afraid of them as they of me, of what I would have to do them, of what was expected of me. I was glad when a friend took the lead. So, your commander violated a basic peace talk. He invited us out in the open and then tried to blow us up, knowing that this singular action of his could pull all of you in direct harm. He went ahead and did it. He does not care about any of you. He is even willing to give up some of you as collateral damage. So long as it appears that he took drastic action, how does that make you feel? None of them could ever answer, stare at us, bond and gagged us as they were. Kusaliji came and stood next to them, ready to do as we bid. I worked to each one of them and bent to look into their eyes, despite every nerve in my body screaming at me to get as far away from them as I could. Lord Biggles and Lord Gaunt sat with their eyes half closed, barely conscious of what was happening around them, having surrendered themselves to their circumstances. Lord Fraser oscillated between falling asleep and trying to break away the rope that bound him. The rest of the time he stared at us in a state of shock. Captain Dunstan and Lord Harris leaned against each other, awaiting their fates. It was mainly Mr. Brown and Lord Bison who I worried about. Both seemed to be tickling time bombs with their wondering eyes, their proud chest, and the hatred under their skin. I avoided looking at the back where Guruji and Wagner were secured, hoping somehow that they would evaporate with my ignorance. The voices seemed terrified, but it was not him that we would threaten now. So we have to give it back to them, right? So then we are not just making empty threats, Afreen said with a palm. She looked at me to continue. I swallowed. Kusaliji, help Lord Bison up and bring him to us. Bison struggled with all his might, but there was not much he could do except make muffled noise. I will not deny myself the mirth that come from seeing him like that. And I focused on the emotion. I faced him and his struggling body and tried to steady myself. The gun in my hand felt limp and useless. It grew heavier by the minute and I played. Devastated, I realized I could not bring myself to point it at him. I looked to Afreen and I saw the hesitation in my eyes mirrored in her own. The two people on whom the chandeliers fell earlier, Afreen said quietly. Their bodies still lie in the ballroom. Let's start by displaying them to our welcome party outside. I nodded and felt nervousness at the pit of my stomach. It was as if I was six again and had stolen my friend Simi's pretty little doll, hidden it in my bag, and watched her look for it in panic. I knew that I had been doing something wrong, but I could not more return the doll to her than stop watching her look for it. I was so much interested in what I could do with the doll at home to feel guilty about how I had gotten them. We made Bison lean closer to the window, watch closely. I whispered to him before going back to stand next to Finn. Along with Kusaliji, we brought the two bodies forward. I saw the battered socked faces and there shut their eyes. After checking once more for their pulses, we got them close to the window and, on the count of three, flung the bodies outside. They landed with a thud, crashing against the road. I had to shut my eyes tight to remove myself for that moment. And then we suddenly heard Ripon's voice over the horn. You are dangerously close to being dead, all of you. You have murdered citizens of Great Britain, and you will be killed so brutally that you will be begging for a death like this one. Surrender your arms immediately and hand over the rest of the hostages, or the consequences will be far worse than you wildest imaginations. Blood rushed to my ears on hearing what he said. I wanted to fling him by his neck and hurl him down the building over and over until I had squeezed all of his big words. He had just tried to kill us, all of us. He was sly and underhanded and completely unconcerned about what we fought for, to the extent that he was deaf to anything we said. I grabbed Bison and pulled him closer to us. With a strength I had not known I possessed, I pulled his shirt tightly from back until he spluttered and choked behind his gag. Following my cue, Afrin picked up our speakerphone. You dare threaten us again, your man will fall one by one if you don't start taking our demands seriously. Lord Commander, you made a fool out of your own negotiation, and you. The air was knocked out of me with a sudden thud. My gun fell from my hands. A few moments later, I realized that Bison had somehow managed to hit me with the back of his head and elbow, freeing down to the ground. I struggled to put the world in perspective again, tried to push away the darkness that engulfed in my eyes. His hands tied up, though they were inched towards my fallen gun. I saw Afrin throw himself at him as he shook her off with pure brute strength. I tried to refocus and reached for the gun before he did, but he still managed to knock me down sideways. Now he was on top of me, and my hand was stuck between my body and the floor. His hands crawled up my spine to my neck, but before he could get a grip, I managed to wring my hand out. I placed the gun against his body and pulled the trigger. His body stopped thrashing, and the life went out of him as a warm pool of blood spread over me. He groaned in agony, and I felt it too on my person, under my skin and soul, in every fiber of my being. He collapsed and suddenly felt much heavier. I too could barely breathe now, squeezed as I was under him. It took the combined effort of Afrin and Kusaliji to finally pull me out of there under him. He lay whimpering on the ground, and I emerged, drenched in his blood and my sweat. We have to fling him over, I said, and the three of us picked him up. He moved and struggled, still alive. With a deep breath, we hurled him down the window. Just as Charles ran to us to ascertain what was happening, Bison fell with another third, and the Charles looked on horrified. I won't lie and say we were not equally horrified, but we had to act immediately, or on the outside it would appear as if we had been taken down. Afrin picked up the horn. Your gift, Lord Commander. You dare shoot at us again, or try to break your word, and each of these hostages here will end up the same way. Consider yourself warned. I leaned against the windows, panting and avoiding looking at Charles. I left Afrin to warn the other hostages against trying to something, and ducked into the kitchen to collapse on the ground to let what had just happened sink in. Ever since I had learned how to hold a gun in my hands, I had been most afraid that I would not be able to do that what was required, that when the time for it came, I would not be able to pull the trigger. But now the time had came, and And an even greater fear overtook me because now? What is the beginning and the end of it? It is so much easier to live a life wishing for something than to find out that you can actually do it and then having to live through the consequences of it. I lay in a pit of my own doing, staring at a blank spot on the wall. Moment from my childhood played in my head when I could imagine growing up and living a beautiful, glamorous life. Here I was sitting on the floor covered in another man's blood. All the time I had been fighting, I had thought I was being a hero, that I was going after some greater purpose. I believed I was winning freedom for those masses who were too scared to move to act. In my innocence and naivety, I had taken on the role of a revolutionary without having a sense of what that could fully imply. Perhaps this is where the world of the talkies and the world as it were differed. This was life, and there would be no end credits roaring here, no going back to reality when the lights came back on. Underneath all the passion had been the sneaky hope that they would cheer my name for what I was willing to do, for what I was willing to stay. I was hoping, despite all that, the novelty and the generosity with which I fought would be cause of inspiration and celebration, even fame. Nothing could be further from the truth, and the realization of that relieved me of the burden that I felt I had been carrying around for weeks, months, maybe even all my life. How dare I even entertain the thought that I was special enough, have enough, brave enough, selfless enough to serve the cause of freedom to this extent. I was nothing more or less than that. But my circumstances made me just like everyone else. There was no heroism in my acts, no heroism in taking hostages a bunch of men and threatening them, even taking their lives. If there was anything, then perhaps it was only simple and considerate duty. The awareness rose in my chest in waves, but before it could drown me completely, a friend brought me back. Pull yourself together, Nandini. Noor needs you. We need you. At the name and voices of my sister, I forced myself to get up and came outside, trying my sari on the side. I had now come too far to have any regret hold me back. I went over to where the hostages lay and pulled the viceroy by the collars of his shirt, bending close to him. I had a man's inside of me which bubbled widely on the surface. You want to go the same way as your friend, old man? The viceroy shook his head slowly and indicated with his eyes to the gag. I pulled it down. Then, why won't you agree to our demands? Tell the commander, Lord Commander, that you are the head and that you agree to what we ask. He got a determined look. I will. Oh, he signed, and in that second looked the shadow of the man he had been before entering our ballroom. It's because increasingly clear to me that this whole enterprise has not been about saving us, but about saving face. The only reason they don't want us to die is because it would make Britain look weak. It is a humbling realization, I have to say, when you give all your life to service, your youth, your holidays, all your life, even your marriage, and you find out they don't care, or that they care if you live or die only as far as it affects them. And then, when you have had some time to dwell on what your life has amounted to, you see what matters. I see you putting your life on trial for a rightful yet a wise freedom, and here my life, the lives of those outside, built on a bed of power, injustice, and oppressions. I started deep into his eyes, and while he seemed sincere enough, there was no way to tell if he meant what he said. Arrange for talks with Lord Commander, the viceroy said. This time he will come here alone and unarmed, and he will speak with me. It took some hours of preparation until we could find a way that everyone would agree on. We refused to meet outside because there was no way for us to trust Ripon again. Ripon refused to enter the hotel unarmed in case we took him hostages as well. Finally, a compromise was reached. The meeting would be held at the entrance to the hotel just before the foyer. In the space that had once been Begum Jan's Oriental Bazaar, we would block the view of the rest of the foyer, and Ripon would be accompanied by one armed guard. The vices would be joined by Ratan Babu, armed, and me, unarmed. Charles, as a neutral observer, and hostages would observe the proceeding unarmed. A friend would stay behind to care for Noor and keep an eye on the hostages. She held me by the arm tightly. Is Charles on our side? I nodded. Go in. Negotiate, but don't give in. Don't give up. What is most important, we all knew that a lot was riding on this meeting. We had given up everything, every part of us, every second of our life had led us up to where we were today. We had given up our very souls. Vision's withering face haunted me every moment, and perhaps would continue to all my life after today. After all we had done, we would have anything left. It did not matter if we emerged victorious or not. Too much had been sacrificed to ever find a way back. There would not be a way back. There never is. For life is a series of actions and its consequences, and a wish to return to the past is sheer, impractical nostalgia. Up close, Ripon looked ugly and menacing like an angry hound. His early fake display of calm when he had conspired to bomb us to the ground had disappeared entirely. Now he was a man who bore the troubles of an empire quietly, literally, and he no longer seemed to be handling it with a composure standing tense. He stuck close to his bodyguard, a tall white man with a gun that could kill every single person in the room in one go. They seated themselves across from the viceroys, who too seemed equally tense in another way. He wore the look of a man who had seen the face of the devil, the face of truth, and did not know what to do with himself, but he lay his bound hands across the table and signed in a way that made me think he was determined to change the world. He barely seemed to notice Ratan Babu's presence behind himself. Charles, his hands bound, sat with me on the third side of the table, watching Ripon's guard carefully. You know our three requests? Your Excellency Lord Ripon, I said using a professional tone, and we believe them to be extremely fair. We don't ask you to do anything extraordinary, simply provide us with what it is our due. Ripon placed a paper on the table in front of us and scrutinized it for some time before looking at us, at all of us. He took his time to gaze at each of us individually, as if trying to figure out the cracks that we might betray, to see if there was still a twist to the history, to the story we had yet to reveal. He cleared his throat, indicating the start. It has been conceived by the Prime Minister's office that, in exchange for the safe return of the each kidnapped British person and an unconditional surrender by all terrorists. We are not terrorists, but go on, Ratan Babu said. We will provide the above mentioned terrorists the right to fair trial depend on their unarmed and peaceful surrender. A silence followed his pronouncement, and Ratan Babu nudged the viceroys with his gun, signaling that he speak. You will have to concede more. Lord Ripon looked up. I was getting to it. A letter of admission pertaining to the event surrounding Jamsetji Mistry will be provided to his family, and the last but not the least, as a gesture of goodwill, as an anticipation to British long-term plan for the subcontinent, a public address announcing India's self-governance in due course will be acceded to. It will be a special feature on the BBC. Don't pretend as if it's even for us, Lord Ripon, Ratan Babu said. The only nation that stands to gain goodwill from this gesture is Britain. There is no such thing as due course. Independence for India must be granted within the year if you don't want all of these heads on a spike. You forgot yourself, you filthy swine. Ripon got up with a start, his chair falling back, and both Ratan Babu and Ripon's guard had their guns centimeters from each other's chest. They stood like that for a tense moment before the viceroys appealed for peace. And what about the third condition, the apology? I asked. Impossible, Lord Ripon said flatly, without a hint of hesitation in his voice. There will be no apologies whatsoever. Then there will be no freedom for the viceroys. I snarled, banging my hand on the table. Then so be it. Lord Ripon glared at me. Keep him in here forever. Chop him up into little pieces and throw them down the valley. Fling him out of the window as you did with others. But England will not apologize. India was conquered and belonged to us, still does, and we will never ever apologize for that. I stared at the shameless man at first, amazed by his attitude, but then I realized he was still just doing his job. The viceroys were not so happy to hear his outburst, though. The demand was not for an apology for me, and it is my power to grant it, and so I say I will apologize publicly. I will make a broadcast, write a letter, whatever you would like. If you let me out for here free and fine, I will apologize for England's crime in any way you need me to. Lord Ripon said nothing at that and simply stared at the viceroys for a long time. Finally he spoke. Hard to say we were once friends. He then turned to us. Negotiations are over. Ripon got up. I didn't know what else to do, so we let their party leave. I had to discuss with others. I had to get the viceroys back. But Charles now stood blocking all of us. He turned to the viceroys in anger. Well, that was about the stupidest thing you could have done. Charles looked wild with fear, and I didn't understand what could have happened so quickly to make him feel like this. It's true that Lord Ripon had not subscribed to all that we had said, but I could see no immediate cause for this reaction. Pick up everything now, Charles groaned. He asked to be united and then began pacing the room as if he were in charge and one of us had gone and ruined everything for him. We all looked at him quizzically until the viceroy spoke up. What are you going on about, Niler? Charles looked at the viceroy, looked like he would kill him much faster than any of us ever do. You told them that you would make the apology even when they do not consent to it. You are a dead man from this moment on, and not just you, but all of us in here. I don't know how long it is before they get the approval, but they are going to bomb this place down. They have to sacrifice you anyway now. You stand in their way and are a much bigger liability alive than dead. Once you are dead, they could make a mockery out of you, but alive. You pose the threat of revealing what we went on here, of making an apology they would never allow. They need you to be dead now. Do you understand that? Sir, this was a huge error in the judgment, and now everyone here would have to pay the price of your short Sentence. You should not have said that you will apologize. You really should not have. I didn't know how to take it. I knew Charles was right logically, but I still was not sure whether we could trust him completely. The others looked as unsure as I did. How could we abandon the operation based on his judgment? The vice stood shook for a moment, ready to argue, but then the words seemed to have been snatched out of his mouth. He sank down on the floor as he realized what Charles was saying. Charles walked up to me and held me by the shoulder. Nalini, it's over. You must run. Think about yourself, your sister. Noor is dying. Do you have a way out? Of course, there was a way out set up for us right from the beginning when Begum Chan had planned with us. Would leaving now spell a colossal waste of all that we had done? Would we, like these rats running away at the first sign of trouble, should we stay and fight any which way? Or should we take account of reverse situation? Mr. Naylor is right, Noor said from where she sat in the foyer, hidden from our view, her voice barely a whisper but still inciting further fear in me. She was hurt but fully aware, and having followed our discussion in detail, her voice had regained some of the determination it always seemed to hold. So we leave everyone here and run? Ratan Babu asked, his tone indicating that he did not like any bit of that plan. Charles cast a quick look at the vices. Him. You can't live here. No. If he wants to have any chance of living, he better flee as well. There is no place left for him, that much I can tell you. And as long as he is still alive, he could still be bargaining chief for you. It's time to escape the hotel and Simla. It was hard to escape at first, but when we did, we moved fast. We bound the Viceroy up again only by his arms. He knew as well as us that we were his best chance for survival at the moment, so I was not afraid that he would run from us. The bigger problem was Noor, still too weak to keep in motion with us. Ratan Babu would have to carry her, which meant that we would lose one shooter. One person would help us to get cover when needed. I looked at the hostages, most of whom were leaning against something or someone, their eyes exhausted and fearful. Only Wagner, although most of his face was still covered, gazed at us attentively, ready to curse us to death if we only got a shot at freedom. What about Guruji? I asked, and my question brought stillness. On the urgency of the moment, all of us had forgotten about him. We will leave him here, Ratan Babu said, casting him a disparaging glance. Let the British do their justice with him as they please. Guruji did not appear to like that idea one of bit. Kusaliji, let's get ready fast. The old man, on hearing a friend's commanding but kind voice, quickly started to settle the remaining hostages in place. As the others grabbed what we might need, I went to Charles. Come with us, I said, holding him by the shoulders. What goes for the vices will always go for you. They will know that you have helped us. They will send you to prison or kill you. Come and be with me somewhere far away. Be with your child. For a moment he was shocked, his eyes light up with love, inspiring in me that unquenchable flame that somehow always found a way to come alive near him, that inspired in me hope despite our insurmountable odds. He looked at me with longing, and in that moment he seemed so innocent and sweet that it was impossible that he could have been pointing a gun at my face hours before. But he had also saved my life, my family's life. More than once he almost nodded, but then, no, I will stay here, he said. But why? To buy you time, to make sure they don't bomb the place and kill all the hostages, to mislead them about your whereabouts, to confuse them about what actually happened in here. Tears sprang to my eyes as I realized once again that there was something between us. He put his own life at stake to save us against his own people, refusing to come with me, even knowing I would be the mother to his child if I got the chance to get out of here alive. But that was not the plan. He smiled. The universe laughed at your plans, Nalini. You say you will go on one way and life sticks its head and drag you to another. Perhaps the best one can do, or the only thing can do, is surrender himself to its vagaries and uncertainties. Charles, it's time to go home. Dorothy, he said, smiling as he held my hand. There is no place like it. An eternity passed in the moment between us when we got up to look into each other's eyes, which in the chaos and the death that surrounded us felt like an ocean of love. He would stand at the entrance to the hotel waiting for them to storm in, willing to protect us, to save us. So in the end he did understand, perhaps even too well, what I stood for, what I felt, what I wanted. As I took my hands away from his, waves of repentance and helplessness washed over me. What had we done? What had I done? This was all that home was. The hotel, the town. Noor was barely alive, and Charles. They pulled me away from him, and turning my back, I followed the others in a daze. It seemed like the end of the world as I knew it, when it should have felt like the beginning. Chapter 27. When you need to get out, come through the bunkers, and I will lead you through the tunnel and away from Simla. We will hide in the hills for a while before things calm down, and then make our way down to Kalka with some Muslim friends. We will travel in Sarsi, hide in Punjab, and then it would be up to you. You can never be who you were again at At least until India is free, but perhaps thanks to you, it won't be changed for long. Take the exit when you have the need, and we will be there. We made for an odd group. The viceroy with his hands bound tight, right behind Afreen who led the group. They were followed by Ratan Babu who carried Noor. Reluctant, I was rushed shed, followed by Kusaliji, who had taken our escape and duty as his personal dharma. I had to smile at him. He would have been with us since we were little girls, who was willing to give up everything, who had given up everything just for us. Without the usual lamps we light, the bunkers were dark as night, and we had to rely on little silvers of light that somehow managed to make their way in. A friend reached the trapdoor that led to the tunnels we had earlier cleared up by blasting away the debris that had caved it for years. She tried to push, but the door would not budge. Push harder, Ratan Babu called out. I am. It does not move. Help. He helped Noor lean against me and Kusaliji and bent forward to help Afrin, but even with their combined strength, the door would not move. Ratan Babu made us move back and ran it with the full of force of his side and turned us to when it still did not move. Open. What's happening? He muttered. We all took our turn at the door before Noor voiced out, but we feared it's blocked. We knew she was right. The trapdoor was blocked from the outside. We had no way to leave. Stood shaking, the knot inside my stomach twisting harder with every passing minute, barely able to see the others in the darkness, but still able to hear the fear in their voice. Only Begum Jam knew about it. I heard Afrin say, her voice hoarse from betrayal. She blocked the door. She has trapped us in here. Blood rushed to my ears as Ratan Babu tried to argue in vain against what was now an obvious fact. She had blocked our exit. My mind scrambled to find other reason for this turn of events, hoping to see something, anything that could explain what was going on. Begum Jan was the one who had encouraged us not to give up on the plan after we discovered Soot's double crossing and Guruji's true intentions. The hypocrisies that unknowingly lay at the root of our undertaking. She had found this way out for us, orchestrated it, supported it for what we all thought to be the greater good. If fear had made her back out, although she was not the sort, she could have just not helped us through the tunnels. But why would she block us in the hotel? We have to go back to the foyer, Noor said, and her voice brought me back. She's right. Come on, let's get back, I said, leading the way. We lead a puzzled Viceroy back to the place of his captivity, trying to fight the blackness and that threatened to drown us. We retreated through the servants' passage back up to the ballroom, finding the hostages leaning up against each other, Charles helping them with water. We don't have a way out, I announced, as Ratan Babu helped Noor to the sofa. Charles, don't wait for an explanation. Well, you can't stay here. They can come in any moment. We will use the hostages, Afrin said. We will warn them. It won't work. None of that will work. It's too late. I looked around the room. I still didn't understand why Begum Jan had betrayed us like this. She had helped us plan our fight for India's independence, for our father, for the very dignity of our soul. Then why would she trap us in here like this? Did something happen to her? It terrified me to peace when I thought of how beautiful life was, how much I enjoyed smiling and laughing and living with my sister, to breathe the fresh mountain air, to greet people as they passed me by, to have a purpose that ran in my life, to be able to love, even if that love did not reach fulfillment. If they shot me in the heart just now, all the life that I had nurtured over the years would be snuffled out so easily, like it never existed in that moment. I knew that I did not want to stop believing, living. I wanted freedom, honor, revenge, all that I had said before, but I also wanted to live. I wanted to love. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with Charles. Being happy, I wanted to see my sister live out their lives. The thought was like a breath of fresh air. It opened my eyes and took away the darkness. Why should I give up now, after all that had been done? I wanted to live so badly, and I would not let these people take that away from me. I would not let these people take my sisters away from me. I would not let these people take away my life from me. Ekla Chalore, a voice whispered in my mind, and my father spoke to me. In that moment of clarity, he told me what I had thirsted to hear all of my life, that he was proud of us all and that he wished he could be here with us. He was sorry to have left us all alone. He said that freedom was beautiful, but so were moments with the people one loved the most. He said we had to make it out, leave and go far away, and that our action would never be forgotten, that we will certainly leave our mark on history. In turn, I asked for his forgiveness. I apologized to him for leaving our beloved Shimla like this, leaving the hotel he had so lovingly built, gone to down to its pieces. I apologized to him that in our struggle for freedom against our oppressors, we had to give up so much. So when I looked up, ready for what I must do next, the love I bore made me go on, not hate, revenge, or the quest of glory. No, love always overwhelmed these baser emotions. Charles was shaking me out of my stupor. I looked at him, then at the others. We have to go out the only way left for us. From the front, they are willing to sacrifice the viceroys, but they would not dare to do that in full view of everyone. If earlier would have we had to stay hidden to stay alive, now we must be seen. We had only minutes before the Lord Commander stormed in again. It would have to be fast. Without warning, all of us stepped out in the foyer, making the hostages come forward. The only person we left inside was Guruji, to be dealt with by Lord Ripon. But when I turned to look back, I saw his head hanging limply to the side. Surprised, I went to him and saw remains of potassium signed on his shoulder. Guruji was dead. I suppose he thought it a better fate. Outside, the sky was bright and beautiful, silhouetted against which was the ugliness of the commander in chief and his army. This was the moment everyone would remember, that I hoped would not be forgotten for the centuries to come. Crowds of people now stood behind the army at the gates, and they were yelling and cheering and going mad. They knew we would not give away the hostages if we did not have a sound chance of getting out alive. They knew the hostages were only our only chance to get out alive. We announced that we wanted 2 cars to carry us and the Viceroys outside the city borders. In return, we would give up the remaining hostages at the hotel garden. They granted us our attempt, thinking it to be fulfilled. As we waited in the foyer, I cast one last look at the hostages and, in my mind, sent them an apology. It was never about you. I felt completely exposed, appreciating the vulnerability of our body and how it took so little to end everything for us. It took quite a while for the other car to be led through the crowds and arrive in front of us. I could see some of the soldiers laughing. Where would we hide with the cars? As soon as we were away from the crowds, they would shoot at us all. The vices of Rin and Ratan Babu entered one of the car, and Ratan Babu would be able to drive that one. I smiled at my sister and her husband, who held hands, still sweet and vulnerable despite being strong and fierce. They were the truth, the real deal, the ones who were brave and worthy of respect, who deserved to live their life fighting against injustice. Charles joined Kusaliji, Noor, and me in the other car, and he drove us through the army between the Sipais and the crowds of Simla. The car began to move. I gave the hotel one last look and whispered a small goodbye. I hope to see you soon, I said to it with all my courage and might, and whatever was left of my will. We moved forward. Charles was driving us to what was our only chance of a life, and I stared at him with what I knew to be unconditional love. Somewhere over the rainbow, I whispered to him, seeing his shaking hands on the steering wheel, the skies are blue, and the dreams you dare to dream all really do come true. He smiled, and it broke my heart. I never thought that everything that was wrong in this world could be solved by overthrowing the British. Perhaps the old master will be replaced by the new ones. Perhaps we will participate in the operation knowing or unknowingly do change ever end. Yet it was clear to me that none of it was in vain, that every drop of blood we spilled, every scratch on our bodies, every last splinter of the beautiful Royal Hotel Simla that had been home to us for years would go down in the world, bearing the marks of a battle fought for justice and freedom. Lord, I hope you will forgive us. I hope you will remember that we had clean hearts. I hope you will remember that whatever we did, it was for our motherland, for the place we call home, for our dignity and integrity. As the car went forward and the wind blew in my face, I knew my in my heart we will build ourselves up again. When the time is for it, our names will not be forgotten, no matter the attempts of those who wish it to be so. This short chapter in history will see the light when 3 women gave up everything they had to save their motherland, when they negotiated with the most powerful man on the land and defeated him. We turned the town upside down and left right under their noses. We brought an empire to its knees. We transferred through the crowd, and people started to come closer, trying to touch the car. After a while, even throwing themselves at us. Tears followed through my eyes. They wanted to protect us. They wanted us to leave. They wanted to hug us, the car we were in, with all the love they had to give. I was looking out at the people, seeing their curiosities and joys and griefs, when I saw one of the faces in the crowd, staring at us in sorrow. Why did you do it, Begum Jan? I shouted out, still hurt, keeping my eyes fixed on her. We went our own land, baby, she yelled. We want our own land, baby, she yelled. I realized only later, with this independence we can't have our own land. We would not have time to negotiate it, but I only realized it later when they told me I must stop your coup. I thought the gods were supposed to bring us together, not to push us apart. I shook my head in disappointment and sorrow, and she passed us by. The guards would soon be behind us, and it was almost as if I were in a trance. Charles told me to jump on the count of 3. No, he would not join. He kept insisting he loved me far too much to stop the car from moving. As long as the car keeps driving, he is able to buy just a bit more time for us, for the Sipais to think we are still in the car. You must crawl through the crowds, Nalini. Ask them to push you forward. They will help you. You will see. 1. Nalini, don't cry. It's not the time. 2. Take care of him or her. 3. I looked up in the sky, the on my face, and joined my hands in prayer, knowing that I had only a second to save my words. Lord, let there be love for who is willing to die to save me. Let there be freedom for each one. Let there be life, and a life of dignity. This was my sacrifice, and even if I knew it would end like this, I would do it again 100 times. For what is worth living for is also worth dying for. We jumped and were immediately held up by people. Hands urgently shoved us forward, and everything was a blur. I tried to catch a last glimpse of Charles, but it was too late. At least I could feel Saliji and Noor close to me. I know they were also being pushed forward far into the crowds. I saw another face that terrified me once again. Wagner, anger writ on his face. Closing in, I hurried forwards, jostling past the people, letting them push me. I craned my neck to look for the others, Afrin and Ratan Babu, but saw nothing. We were getting ahead and far, simply through the crowds, and then there were gunshots. Wait for me, I am coming. I called out to the others. I had been momentarily distracted by the parakeet family in the tree. In the summer, they fluttered about fearlessly, the colors on their bodies standing out in the forest green. I hurried up to the trail, pulling up the ends of my sari, following the laughing voice of my sister and Ratan Babu. It made me happy to see how Noor had taken to Ratan Babu by now, trusting him completely, her earlier misgivings completely forgotten. So, what are we going to do after? I asked them, and they looked at me in confusion. After all this, after Guruji has killed the Viceroys, Mr. Sood helped us escape some weeks ago by then, and let's suppose we are free. What we will do after? I saw my sister exchange a look. We will have to go to Bombay, right? I saw that a friend was talking to Ratan Babu and not me. Oh yes, right. I realized she was married. I will come with you. We will ride. Where else? As long as the hotel is not returned to us, the light of the Bombay talkies beckoned me again, and I felt a secret thrill about it being our next neutral destination. If nothing else, going for the talkies would be so easy there. It would be a good plan, Noor said. There we can find you a nice, suitable man. There are so many Parsis in Bombay. I groaned. Not that again. Truly, my sister had over overrush this topic. When will they learn that I was simply not that interested in any Parsi man? Are you blushing, Nandali? Afrin asked, extending a hand towards my cheek, trying to pull it. I slapped her hand away. And she laughed, trying to pinch whatever part of me she could reach. Oh, stop it, Ratan Babu, control your woman. Oh, I gave up on that long ago, he said with a sigh, moving ahead with Noor as Afrin and I continued struggling. Wait till your children trouble you, Afrin. I will just sit in the corner, sip my tea, and watch. Oh, it will be so much fun, Afrin laughed. Oh, you have no idea. My children will be very disciplined. They will not dare. I will teach them to trouble you. As if you could. I'll teach them to gang up on you. How many do you want? Four at least, no less, she answered. I smiled at the thought of them surrounded by their four children who inherited their disregarded of rules. For rules, for order, for tradition, that would be one chaotic household. I can't wait, I told her happily, and she smiled at me, her eyes dreamy. Hurry up, Noor called us from the further up the path, and I saw the hotel silhouetted against the evening light. I held a friend by the hand, almost home. सो गाइस यहाँ पे स्टोरी तो ख़त्म हो गई है. तो जैसा कि अब चार्ल्स का तो पता नहीं कि क्या हुआ क्या नहीं, बट स्टोरी यहाँ पे ख़त्म हो गई है. इफ़ यू वांट तो मैं प्रोलॉग भी पढ़ देती हूँ. सॉरी, ईपीलॉग. 7 years लेटर, बॉम्बे इंडिया, 14 अगस्त 1947. अच्छा, ये इंडिपेंडेंस से एक दिन पहले का है. आई गेट आउट ऑफ द वे. वी गॉट ऑन द साइड. ए मोची, लेट द साइबर्स गेट थ्रो. आर यू ब्लाइंड और वट? खुशाली जी, इफ़ यू कुड नॉट. We walked through the crowds of people that had gathered outside old Poonawala shop, who had promised the radio would be loud enough that the area would reverberate with its sound. The best spot had long been taken, with people settled for far along the street with chai, samosa, achar and vada. Loudspeakers were connected to the radio and played Sare Jahan Se Acha until the speech began. The whole street was dressed up. Marigold lining all shops and a dhol playing at every second turn. Yeah, Bombay hai meri jaan. Nobody will get out of the way just because you ask. That's Bombay for you. Now get in through here. Old Punawala managed to pull us inside, and Noor, Khusaliji and I found sports for ourselves, and Afi decided to nestle in Khusaliji's protective lap. I crossed my legs and sat down, as infected by the excitement that pervaded the air as anyone else. Punawala began working on building up the mood and got a dhol player to come and play in front of us. In front of the radio, the man in the front got up and began dancing along with some old woman with who Punawala blessed with some notes and flowers. Somebody put their arm up in the air and yelled, Bharat Mata ki jai, Bharat Mata ki jai. More slogans hailing from freedom were chanted, and the mood became more and more celebratory with every passing minute. At some point, when two men began fighting, obviously drunk, Punawala threw them out, yelling about keeping decor and being mindful of women and children. The radio began to hiss, sticky, and finally the announcer came on, welcoming welcoming Pandit Nehru amidst cheers and screams. My heart began to beat faster, and the brush of Noor's sari drap against my skin took me back to the evening in the ballroom. How regal everything had looked. The floor had been skilly clean, and the room had smelt of inchwood, fresh air, and the lingering perfume of all the women who had come that evening. How beautiful their dresses were, and how their heels trapped on the floor. And there had been food, so much food: caviar, brandy, peaches, timbale of chicken, turkey stuffed with cheese nuts, spring lamb in mint sauce, red head duck and guava jelly, kraut eggs, bananas, palm pudding, patties, puchis, miss pipes, and so much more. Amma, you have to listen carefully. Afi pulled at my sari and I nodded at him, telling him to listen properly as well. We all clapped and screamed as Punawala asked for silence during the speech, and we followed obediently. Obediently. Long year ago, we made a tryst with destiny. From the side, Noor held my hand tightly, and I held hers tighter, blinking back the tears that welled up in my eyes. And now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full of measure, but very substantially at the stroke of our midnight hour when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. A moment comes which comes but really in history when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, find utterance. The bumpy road of life has several paths charted out for us, and fate has already decided its boundary and corners. When I was a little girl, I did not understand why my elders would say that all is written in the stars, that human hands are more mere actors in the affairs of destinies inscribed long ago. I didn't understand why they fatiguely chose to accept this, forgetting in my ignorance that they knew so much more than me. Yet, when reality decided to knock on my doors, I too had no choice but to accept with open arms. Now I tell my son that the joy and grief of the world are not up to us to choose, and he too laughs at me like I laughed at my elders. All my life I had wished to go away, not realizing that I had just wanted to come home. I had wished to live other lives in the other lands, not realizing that I only wished to live in my own life in its entirely. I had thought that the watchful eyes of my sisters and the walls of the hotel held me in a tight grip without knowing that it would be the lightest I would ever feel. I had thought that glories and fortunates awaited me in another corner of the world, forgetting that they were actually to be found in the loving servings of a friend's food, in the hidden adoration of Noor's scolding, and in the gentle ways of Ratan Babu, in the halls of the hotel that I knew better than the beats of my own heart. Amma, what does it mean, freedom? They said many times freedom, Afi asked me as the speech ended and the celebration resumed. We began walking back, traversing through the crowds, but then deciding it was too nice to be out, we grabbed a corner of a street to sit and look around. Asked Noor Amma. Noor rolled her eyes at me, trying to calm Afi as he demanded an answer. It comes from the word free. What is free? Like when you buy from mangoes and the nice man gives you the fifth one free, so you don't have to pay for it. So free means you don't have to pay for it. I snorted. You have to pay a lot to be free. Noor tried again. No, it's more like you can do whatever you want. That is called being free. Afi scratched his head, on which lay a beautiful nest of brown gulls. So I can throw mithai at someone because I am free. Unable to bear this conversation, Khusaliji took Afi in his arms, looking straight into his eyes, serious. Free is what you are, a young man today more than ever. Free is what you are, thanks to your Amma, your Nur Amma, your father, and most of all your namesakes, Afrin Amma and Ratan Babu. I looked at Khusaliji, tearful again. Thanks to Khusaliji. Afi seemed satisfied for now, repeating, free is what I am. Free is what I am. At home, another surprise awaited us. A man stood outside our home wearing a smart kurta pajama, a new turban, spectacles with golden rims, and a file in his arms. He folded his hands at us in greeting and asked if he could come in. He looked so different from when we had last seen him 2 years ago, shiny and polished with promise of new India. Noor kept the door open. What do you want, Badiaji? But of course, I wanted to remind you that we haven't forgot you in the turning of clothes in the new day. I have to come back to fulfill our promise. Noor raised her eyebrows. You turned us away when we came begging to you for help. You let us forage on the streets. I got you this house. He roared. Too little, too late. We asked you to protect us. We who had given up on our lives, everything for the country in which you now so proudly stand. Be grateful we did not deport you. A prize money of 20,000 rupees for each of your heads was up for grabs. You were walking, talking, chats for treasure that you still have a roof over your head is the biggest miracle of all. Oh, Vadiyaji, we have survived so much than your neglect, and we continue to. Don't worry about that. He lost his patience and threw the file on the table. Accept it with grace or not. Here are the papers to Royal Hotel Simla. You got what you wanted and you are safe and sound. You can go back to living at the hotel. Use your real names again. What more can you want? What more can we want? I wonder what more could we want? Jai Hind, he said and left. Noor picked up the file and held it closer to her chest. There would be a day when we would go back, but it was not today. Noor collapsed with a sob and I went to hug her, whispering into her eyes what I knew she needed to hear. Again and every day, it was not your fault. You could not have protected them. They are happy now, raising hell whatever they may be. Once her sobs subsided, my eyes fell on a letter at the door. I went to pick it up, tearing it open when I saw that it was addressed to me. Dorothy, it said. My heart went all kinds of mad and I clutched the paper tighter. We are not in the Kanas anymore, and there is no place like home. I am alive and safe and well. And through my many wonderful skills, I know you are too. It's time I am coming home. I broke into tears and Noor rushed to me. We cried and we cried for all that we had loved and lost and won. We cried until the sky too burst in joy and drops of rain began pelting the earth. Also joyous to touch a new grant that had been emerged from sorrows and sacrifice. Afi ran out and jumped and rejoiced in the rain, tasting its refreshing waters breathing in its evocating smell. I am free, he squealed, thrilled at the fact, absolutely unaware of what it meant. When he came back inside and after I dried him and put him to bed, he held my wrist and asked me, Kusali said freedom was because all of you. Why? What did you do? I smiled at his curious face. Let me tell you a story. सो गाइज़ यहाँ पे हमारी जो ये कहानी है वो ख़त्म होती है। और आपको ये कैसा लगा है बुक, प्लीज़ कमेंट करना। और ये लास्ट वीडियो है इस बुक की। उसके बाद मिलेंगे नए बुक के साथ, तो बने रहे मेरे चैनल पे और सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें। एंड प्लीज़ लाइक और कमेंट भी कर देना, थोड़ा सा सपोर्ट मिल जाएगा। ठीक है, थैंक्स फॉर वॉचिंग।